Good afternoon and welcome to the September 22nd, 2023 meeting of the Rotary Club of Beavercreek. Thanks to Dave Dunce and Dave Brandenburg for being our greeters, Eric as our ticket master, Beth fighting internet issues to help our setup and program, Pete Bales, Mark Weinstein, and Mike Swick for the great programs we have, and of course Jim Gundel, who takes care of our website. I would ask Jonathan to provide us with an invitation.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for such a beautiful day today. Thank you for the opportunity to serve wonderful community. Appreciate it. Thank you for everybody here today. May we continue to give your service. Go Bucks. Amen.
Amen. All right. Jim Jenkins, you have a secretary's report for us.
Yes, we're at 45% today.
Yeah, that's weak, but on a chamber golf day, I'll take it. All right. Okay, Don Adams, with 2 weeks worth of material built up, I'm sure there's at least a couple of chuckles coming out of this.
No pressure, Don. No pressure.
Well, I've been working out here with golf body all morning, and there's a hole number 4. They're giving away John Daly's. That's an Arnold Palmer with Cheetos in it. So I hope that I can get through this.
Really funny, yeah.
Today is Friday, September 22nd, the 265th day of the year. It's amazing. We've only got 100 days left in this year. Just way too fast there. Today we celebrate American Businesswomen's Day, Car Free Day. So I noticed that all of you drove here, you should have walked. Dear Diary Day. I'd like to hear some of the diaries, we'll read some of the diaries in this room. Elephant Appreciation Day. It's also Emancipation Day. Love Note Day. So take that to heart, some of you guys, and write a love note. Somebody would appreciate it. National Brave Day. National Girls Night Out Day. So you ladies in here, you have permission to go out. National Ice Cream Cone Day. National Rock and Roll Dog Day. We also celebrate Constitution Week, International Clean, excuse me, that's International Clean Hands Day. So I hope you all washed your hands before you came in to eat your food. National Go-Kart Week, National Hispanic Heritage Weeks, National Singles Week, and World Goat Days. Those every once in a while they have goat yoga down at the senior center. If you've never done that, go try it. On this day in history, in 1692, the last people hanged for witchcraft in the U.S. Were hung, and there were 19 that were hung overall. 1788, Losauntville, Ohio, now Cincinnati, was founded by land speculators. In 1862, U.S. President Abraham Lincoln issued the preliminary Emancipation Proclamation, threatening to free all enslaved people in the Rebel South if the states failed to rejoin the Union by January 1st. In 1920, the Chicago grand jury convened to investigate charges that 8 White Sox players conspired to fix the 1919 World Series. That year they were called the Black Sox. In 1957, the Western comedy series Maverick opened. I used to watch that every week. I really enjoyed him. In 1958, the U.S. nuclear submarine USS Kate remained underwater for 31 days at the North Pole. And all of us remember this one. In 1989, Baywatch started. In 2006, the F-14 Tomcat retired from the United States Navy. In the club this past couple of weeks, we've had several member birthdays. Dick Gould was September 18th. Dave Happy was September 15th. J.D. Huddleston was September 17th. Jim Jabor was September 13th. Eric Marcus was September 19th. Ed O'Shaughnessy was September 17th. And Rick Morales was September 22nd. We do have a member anniversary, J.D. Huddleston, 5 years in the club. And we had a couple of wedding anniversaries. Steve and Barbara Gilbert, 36 years. Beth and Josh Handworker, 14 years. And Michael Zwick and Anita, 51 years. And I have a blank page. I was talking to Amanda back here because she's teaching her son spelling. And the English language is really hard to follow. The bandage was wound around the loom. All these are spelled the same. The farm was cultivated to produce produce. The dump was so full that the workers had to refuse refuse. We must polish the Polish furniture shown at the store. He could leave if he would just get the lead out. A bass was painted on the head of, or a bass was painted on the head of a bass drum. When shot at, the dove dove into the bushes. I did not object to the object which he showed me. A seamstress and a sewer fell, or excuse me, a seamstress and a sewer fell down the sewer. Upon seeing a tear in her painting, she shed a tear. And how can I intimate this to my intimate friend? There was a social worker from the big city in Ontario who was recently transferred to a tiny community. On the first tour of her new area, she came upon the tiniest cabin she had ever seen in her life. Intrigued, she went up and knocked on the door. "Anybody home?" she asked. "Yep," came the kid's voice through the door. "Is your father there?" asked the social worker. No. He left before mom came in." "Where is your mother? Where's your mother in there?" "No, mom left just before I got here." But protested social worker, thinking that she surely will need to intervene in this situation. "Are you never together as a family?" "Sure, but not here," said the kid through the door. "This is the outhouse." That's our government workers. Yes. Before celebrating a baptism, the deacon approached the young father and said solemnly, "Baptism is a serious step. Are you sure you're prepared for it?" "I think so," said the man. "My wife has made appetizers, and we have a caterer coming to provide plenty of cookies and cakes for our guests." "I don't mean that," the deacon replied. "I mean, are you prepared spiritually?" "Oh, sure," came the reply. "I got a cake of beer and a case of whiskey." Yeah. And little Mary was talking to little Johnny. She said, "I found 20 cents on the sidewalk." Little Johnny said, "That's mine. I dropped a 20-cent coin there this morning." "Well, what I found was two 10-cent pieces." "Yep, that's it. I heard it break when I hit the ground." And this is something we could probably all relate, a lot of us can relate to. There was a distraught senior citizen phoned her doctor's office. "Is it true," she wanted to know, "that the medication you prescribed to me has to be taken for the rest of my life?" "Yes, I'm afraid so," the doctor told her. There was a moment of silence before the senior lady replied, "I'm wondering this, just how serious is my condition, because this prescription is marked no refills." There was an older couple that decided to get married. They were living in Miami and all excited about their decision. They went for a stroll to discuss the wedding, and on the way they passed a drugstore, and Jacob, the man, said, "Let's go in." Jacob addresses the man behind the counter. He says, "Are you the owner?" The pharmacist said, "Yes." Jacob says, "We're about to get married. You sell heart medication?" "Of course we do." "How about medication for circulation?" He said, "All kinds." "Medicine for rheumatism?" "Definitely." "How about suppositories?" "You bet." Jacob said, "Medicine for memory problems, arthritis, Alzheimer's?" The pharmacist said, "Yes, a large variety." "The works." And Jacob said, "What about vitamins, sleeping pills, Geritol, antidotes for Parkinson's disease?" "Absolutely." "Everything for heartburn and indigestion?" "We sure do." "You sell wheelchairs and walkers and canes?" "All speeds and sizes." "Adult diapers?" "Sure." Jacob said, "We'd like to use this store as our bridal registry." Mrs. Donovan was walking down the O'Connell Street in Dublin when she met up with Father Clarity. The father said, "Top of the morning to you. Aren't you Mrs. Donovan? And didn't I marry you and your husband 2 years ago?" She replied, "Yes, that you did." Father said, "Are there any wee little ones yet?" "No, not yet, Father." The father said, "Well, now, I'm going to Rome next week, and I'll light a fertility candle for you and your husband." She said, "Oh, thank you, Father." And then they parted ways. Some years later, they met again. And the father said, "Well, now, Mrs. Donovan, how are you these days?" "Oh, very well, Father. And tell me, do you have any wee ones yet?" "Oh, yes, Father. 2 sets of twins, 6 singles, 10 in all." The father said, "That's wonderful. And how is your loving husband doing?" She replied, "He's in Rome blowing out that damn candle." As always, I like to leave with a couple of positive things. The meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away. And stop worrying about what you have to lose and start focusing on what you have to gain. Today's fines. If you've ever had a diary, that's $1. If you've ever sent a love note to someone, that's $1. If you've ever been to an auto show, that's $1. If you ever watched Maverick on TV, that's $1. And if you want to admit that you watched Baywatch, that's $1. And if you're not wearing a Rotary pin, that's another $1. David, I'm not happy about it.
All right. Who's got a happy butt? Yes, sir.
I'm quite happy that my birthday always falls on International Walk Like a Pirate Day. 2 scallywags on walk the plank. That's fine
Former president here, thanks for showing up.
Thank you, you Rotary.
I wasn't like, my baby.
Yeah, I've been on, my face has been on the Zoom thing, but, last week at the Air Force Marathon 10K, and last year I won, and I was hoping again, like, an actual runner showed up, and he jogged with me the first 4 miles, after winning the 5K the night before at 14:45. And the 5th mile, Area B is that huge downhill on right at 675, and I was like, as we came through, starting the 5th mile, go for it, have fun. I ran a 5:15, he ran a 4:32 for that mile. And so he won. And then he jumped into the half marathon and he ran to the winners for 8 miles and then finally said, "Okay, I'm tired." He slowed down. So I took second. And then I don't know if Carrie here. I just want to shout out to Carrie Fowler. She knows I like native plants, and she offered me last week a tree called a dwarf chinkapin oak. It's not a chinkapin oak that's been made a dwarf, it's entirely separate species. And I was super stoked to have one. And she said she would bring it by on Friday. And I was on Friday really grappling with the decision to put down our Finland, who we've had for 12 years. And we had always just intended to have her cremated. And so we made a decision Friday to have her put down. They came Monday, but we just decided, like, why cremate her? I was just given this beautiful oak tree. And so we buried her in the backyard and planted the oak tree over her. It's kind of tough going out there because I got it right when I graduated from the Air Force Academy, but it's really nice to see the oak tree and to know she's there back. So big thanks to Carrie. That was just kind of one of those weird serendipitous timing things that it meant a lot to me. She didn't even realize it. So yeah, kudos to Gary.
Nice.
So,
All right. Who else has a happy bug? Yes, sir.
Well, I am happy that Brianna made it back safe from the world tour, so she went to Munich, France, Monaco, where? In London, so, that's a lot.
Clearly, you're paying too much to your intern. Who else has a happy bug? I have a couple. I want to thank the people that helped with our project out at Stafford Park. It was very fun. I was hoping that Pete would be here to compliment Jason, the gentleman who worked for the city and helped us with that project. It was excellent. It was just a fun day. Tomorrow we'll be back out. We're going to be. Yes, sir? Okay. We'll be at Springhouse Park, the new park that's at on Patterson and Grange Hall Road. We're going to be clearing some trails. So if you would sign up, so we have some binder or some sign up sheets that are over there that are going to make their way around. One is for starting in October greeters, and the other is if you want to sign up to come out and help us clear some trails. Not a defined finish point there, so if you want to come out for half hour, that's great. And help us out. It'll be a beautiful morning, 9 to 11, but however much you can help us with would be great. I got a chance to tour the park in a gator, and it's going to be just a great place to have that much land, most of which will be open in the city of Beavercreek is just a great investment. I think it'll really serve the community over the years. So, and there's some lucky family who has like a 10-acre private lot in the middle of it that's they're gonna build a house on. So pretty cool. So okay, what else we got? So I'm gonna send out just an email to everybody. We got a request from the Dayton Club about recruiting some people to bowl with other Rotarians. So if anybody happens to be a bowler, I'm just going to shoot an email out. You can request additional information from me. I'll be happy to share that. So I think that's it for now. Yes, sir.
Do we need to bring any tools?
You do not. Great question. No, there'll be tools out there.
Okay.
And some water and Gatorade and whatever. We'll be good.
Dave, if you're going, I don't need to go.
Just because he does the work of 10 people doesn't mean you should not come out and enjoy the time with us. Any other happy bucks or announcements? Jerry?
Dave, I have an announcement. Any of you that have some time on your hands tomorrow afternoon, well, tomorrow evening, we have an honor flight going out in the morning to DC, full plane, their veterans and their caregivers, and they'll be back. They usually come out of the gate there at the airport at about 9:30, 10 o'clock. So we're trying to get as many people out there to welcome them home as possible. So if you have nothing else on your calendar, come on down.
Okay. It's probably halftime of the game, give or take, so people can shoot out there, right? All right, ticket drawing 956183. We're looking for the Queen of Hearts if you draw that ticket, and
Yeah, I think that is me.
and the club's half goes to our Christmas basket project. The five grows, but no jokers on the other side. Okay, any other announcements? Last shot at that. Okay, so today's program, we'll start with a story from 1959 when the soon-to-be founder of Skydive Green County made his first jump. Am I right with that year? 1959? Yeah, and so Jim West has since jumped over 16,000 skydives, and his skydive in Green County was opened in It's been open for over 60 years, which is amazing. And we have a second generation here with us. Kelly West was drawn into the family business. I believe her quote is kicking and screaming, as she had gotten her MBA at Pepperdine University and was doing contract negotiations in LA and was brought back to Greene County. So we are glad to welcome her and hear the story of Skydive Greene County.
Thank you so much for inviting me here today to talk about my father's legacy and our plans for the future. I'm Kelly West, and I am a second generation skydiver. Actually, can't see the screen. Okay, good. Just a bit. Yeah. So just from talking with some folks when I came in, I've noticed that a few of you have made a skydive. By a show of hands, how many of you have jumped out of a perfectly good airplane? So we have quite a few of you. It's actually statistically something that most of the population never does, never thinks of doing. Dad founded Skydive Greene County in 1961, but first he had this idea as a 4-year-old child. He grew up in a small town in eastern Kentucky near Pikeville, and a coal miner town, dirt poor, and he saw the D-Day drop when he was 4 years old. And he went to his grandma, who was raising him at the time, and he decided that he was going to grow up and be a paratrooper. At the time, Sears Roebuck and Company sold jump boots for little boys. So he told his grandma that he wanted a pair of jump boots, got a pair for Christmas, and he went around the area jumping off of railroad bridges. And I assume was water, but I've taken him back for a visit since then, and I'm not sure it was water, which explains a lot. So Jim stayed in the hills until he was probably 7 or 8, and then his stepfather got stationed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I think we're all familiar with that location. And he grew up at Dearborn High School. He had known since the age of 4 that he was going to be a paratrooper when he grew up. There was no other way. So he joined the Army, and after the Army sent him to some computer schools and a couple other training places, he finally went down to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and it didn't take him long to become a jump master with 101st Screaming Eagles. So here's a photograph of him training one of his soldiers to jump out of a perfectly good helicopter, airplane, whatever it was at that time. He quickly accumulated about 400 and some jumps, which is unheard of in the Army. But he took every opportunity that he could get to get in that helicopter and make those jumps. He actually married my mom at an early age. They dated from the time they were 12 and 13. And they got married at 17 and 18 after she graduated high school, and he took her down there and used to throw her in the helicopter when he was jumping. Okay, you can go ahead and advance. And after he got out of the Army in 1961, and he had a decision to make. The Golden Knights, the Army parachute team, was forming at that time, and his friends wanted him to join. Mom, on the other hand, had family up here, and she had some older parents, and she had some siblings that needed to be taken care of and raised. So Dad made the tough decision to get out of the Army and come back to Fairborn or Xenia. and raise her siblings, her 4 siblings. So essentially what happened is they went from 0 children, they adopted me, and then they inherited my mom's 4 brothers and sisters. So they went from 0 to 5 children overnight. All while starting a brand new business of skydiving, which was pretty much unheard of back in 1961. He was truly a pioneer in sport parachuting. The picture on the left is, well, as he found out, it was pretty hard to finance an aircraft to make a parachute jump out of during those days. People kept telling him that he was crazy. And he was just determined to make it happen. Somehow, he and mom ended up winning this Ohio lottery. I don't know if anybody remembers that back in the day. They didn't win the $25,000 or $250,000 jackpot, but they won $5,000, which was enough to buy their Cessna 180. And that's what started them out. The slide on the right is me as an infant. So I actually grew up on the skydiving center. Strangely enough, my mom was a pilot before my dad was. She was actually taught by Doc Jackson. That was her flight instructor. Dad actually didn't start, he actually didn't get his license for many years after he started the skydiving center. He had 4.5 hours of flight instruction with Red Stewart down at Waynesville. And his pilot didn't show up one day, and he got in the plane and started flying. And he got to about 2,500 hours. And mom said, "You better get a license." We were gonna lose it. So he went down to Kentucky Flight Service and took his first check ride. And he is a licensed commercial pilot now. Here's some skydiving photographs in the early days. And back then it was Greene County Sport Parachute Center, jumping around canopies and landing pretty hard. So he got out of the Army. He was about 5'10" on his DD-214 when I took a look at it. Today he stands about 5'5", so he's lost about 5 inches off his stature. And it's from all of those hard brown canopy landings. Through the years, Dad has kind of diversified the business a little bit, and he started crop dusting. A couple of interesting stories there, and I think the statute of limitations is probably run, but that was just one of his side hobbies. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, he actually was approached by Systems Research Laboratory to do some government contracting. And some of you might be familiar with the Advanced Dynamic Anthropomorphic Mannequin, or ADAM. And for about 7 or 8 years, Skydive Greene County was involved with doing some test drops out at our place with the ADAM dummy and a couple of other things that I probably can't mention. So he became a test jumper at our skydiving center because we have a private field, which I'll show you in just a minute. And then he did some jumping out at China Lakes for the Navy to test there. And a lot of it was testing the bailout rigs for the fighter pilots. And here's a magazine article about him being a test jumper with 65 reserve parachute rides. And that's your reserve parachute is your backup parachute. We all jump with 2. We hope the first one works, but if the first one doesn't, the second one will work. It's backed by an FAA rigger. But he was given a bunch of different prototype canopies by probably every skydiving parachute manufacturer in the country. And some of them worked, some of them didn't work. He's okay. He's good. He lived through it. This slide here shows Dad was the first person in the country to franchise skydiving centers. I think at one point he had 13 different skydiving centers, mostly across the eastern part of the US. But they went as far west as Dallas, Louisville, Kansas. And I think he had 18 Cessna 180s and a couple of twin Beech 18s. And this is a picture of just some of them. This is a current picture I took out of a champ. This shows our 250 private acres that we have and our 3 runways. And what that does for us is it gives us the advantage of not having other air traffic get in the way of our parachutes. We don't have to deal with the municipal airport or other airplanes flying around. It's all skydiving all the time. Skydiving has advanced so far. Back in the day, I wouldn't call it a dangerous sport, but there were definitely more risks than there are today. Now, the most popular way of learning how to skydive is through tandem skydive, which I think probably some of you have done, where you're attached to an instructor under one parachute. That instructor has a minimum of 500 jumps. All of ours have thousands. They've been in the sport at least 3 years. And statistically, it really is a relatively safe way of learning how to skydive. That is the way everyone does their first skydive at Skydive Green County. You can see the passenger attached to the front of the tandem canopy. In fact, I'll give you a statistic. The last year I have is 2021. There were 3 million skydives made in the US. There were only 10 fatalities. And of the 10 fatalities, they were all experienced skydivers, and every single one of them was due to human error, not equipment failure. So the skydiving, or sport parachuting to skydiving, has advanced in safety as well. Now we get into the second generation. That's me. I'm a licensed skydiver. I've been trying to learn how to fly since I've been 13, but boys got in the way, and school got in the way, and other things got in the way. I have an MBA, as you said, from Pepperdine University, and I got pulled into the family business kicking and screaming. This is not what I planned. I'm a contract negotiator. This is our third generation. This is my daughter, Ronnie Gross. She's also a licensed skydiver. She is a software engineer from Georgia Tech. She works for Brown University BrainGate doing brain-computer interface, which I barely understand. This is an example of what happens when you don't give your child a bouncy castle for her 8th birthday. She wants a balloon jump, and that's what she got for her. She called it her quarter-life crisis when she turned 25. She got to jump out of a balloon, and she landed in Dave Chappelle's yard at his farm.
Jeez.
Some more pictures of Ronnie and her grandpa, and she would, instead of skip day at school, she'd have jump day at school. So she and her friends would come hang out and jump out of a perfectly good airplane. The picture on the right is an example of one of the disciplines that's very popular with skydive, and we call it belly flying. It's where you try to fly on your belly stable and then hold hands, or formation skydiving, where you link up with other people. The slide on the left is an example of static line jumping, which is probably more familiar to you if you've jumped in the military. Your parachute's deployed by the airplane. That's actually Ronnie doing a clear and pull. She's off the static line there and doing a free fall from about 3,500 feet. The picture on the right is a discipline called free flying. And on this one, she's step flying and has great camera awareness, as you can tell. I'm going to back up for a second to the second generation and my view and sort of the way I run things at Skydive Green County now. My passion is for charity and service. I think Dad was so overwhelmed trying to get these things up and running and franchising, and he did the flying, the jumping, the grass mowing, the mechanicking on the aircraft. He did everything there was to do. I'm not nearly as talented as he is, and I don't have the skill set. So I look at where I can do good. And my passion is for the charity. So what you're looking at here is an event that we held last week called Operation Cherry Bend. And it's working with the veterans for the prevention of veteran suicide. One of these guys might look familiar to you. This is another charity that we worked with for ALS. We have Rick Dorellis, who is instrumental in helping get this off the ground, no pun intended. And William White, who we sadly lost last year. We had the wonderful opportunity of flying aid to the tornado victims in southern Kentucky. I think that was 2 years ago. We got to play Santa Claus by taking down toys and gift cards to make sure those kids had a Christmas when they had absolutely nothing left. And there's a picture of our 60th anniversary several years ago and Dad's birthday. And that's Dad, a picture of Dad, a recent picture of Dad. So I'm going to bring this around back full circle. We talked a little bit about Jim seeing the D-Day drop. Over the years, he became friends with Jim Pee Wee Martin. Jim came out and brought his sons out to jump in the 80s. Martin came back out and jumped in 1990 and did a tandem skydive. And then they decided they wanted to hold his 100th birthday celebration with a Pee Wee Jump Fest that we host every year in April to commemorate his birthday. So this was the first year, and we had thousands of people, reenactors. And we have these beauties on the runway. We had 3 completely restored C-47s that we jumped out of. The reenactors reenacted the D-Day drop from 1,200 feet, and then the sport jumpers were able to do the sport jumping out of them. And it was a once in a lifetime. It's a once in a lifetime. We're doing it every year. But whatever. There's some more pictures of the D-Day reenactment with a static line parachutes coming out just as Pee Wee did over Normandy, but that's over our runway. Another picture of Rick and Pee Wee, and then Pee Wee. The woman on the right is Rosie the Riveter. And then her graduation gift, Pee Wee's great grandson actually packed parachutes for us. And that was the Martin family 4th generation skydive. Since Pee Wee had jumped, his 2 sons had jumped, his granddaughter had jumped, and then his great grandson got to jump. And here we are looking at the reenactment and the C-47 on the runway. That's Pee Wee Jim Martin. And there's Jim West and Jim Martin. So the whole story kind of came around full circle. And we're back to these mass parachute drops. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
How are you able to sign up for the fest that you have in April?
I will give you my card and you can make contact with me and I'll give you the details.
Great.
Because they are doing tandem drops out of those C-47s.
Yeah, I'd be very interested in that.
Okay, thank you.
Does your dad have any health issues from the constant impact of hard landings and stuff like that? I would think, I've heard people having back issues from jumping.
It's interesting because one of my own physicians recently said to me, he said, all of my colleagues, he's a cardiologist, and he said, all of my colleagues that have jumped have back problems, spinal problems.
Wow.
So he does, but the spinal problems don't impair him in any way. He developed dementia after anesthesia. But it had nothing to do with skydiving. But otherwise, I have a perfectly healthy 83-year-old. Yes.
My first jump was a free fall solo. And I was told when I went through that program, it was the only program in the country where your first jump's a free fall solo. Would you say that was an accurate statement?
I think there are other places that will allow you to do what they call accelerated free fall or free fall solo, if that's the program that you used. Or did you do static line?
No, it was free. I jumped out of plane and pulled my own chute.
Did you go to the academy?
Yes.
Okay, so the academy program is completely different. You guys get my ex went to the academy. he explained he did 5 free falls. And he landed kind of hard because of the altitude, and it's not as much fun as the sport skydiving we do, but
It was good. I only did 2. I got hurt on my second one because I wasn't able to get, whatever the level position before I pulled.
yes,
And I was like, they'll kick you out of the program if you go beneath a certain altitude.
you break the hard jack.
Yeah, so I was like, screw it, I'm pulling my chute. And I pulled my chute when I was back to the ground. So I couldn't tell because I was tumbling, and it went down and pulled back up and grabbed my arm on the way back up and really hurt my shoulder. But I don't know, I got 2 jumps, I was happy with it.
Well, I'm glad you liked it. I hear the stories from academy grads all the time. They have a different training program than on the civilian side. I feel like the civilian side gives more extensive training, and we're not landing at 5,000 feet either. The landings tend to be a little softer. Yeah.
For a neophyte, what's the steps? You go down to Waynesville, what are the criteria there that you have to follow before you're given the ability to go up?
First, you have to go to Xenia.
You have to go to sea.
You have to go to Xenia. Yeah, that's the first step. And then, we want everyone to do a tandem skydive first, because we want to make sure that you like it before you commit to an actual training program. We want you to experience the thrill of free fall skydiving. And I can give you my card, if you'd like,
Interesting.
and you can just give me a call and I'll get you signed up for a tandem skydive.
Do it, Chuck. Now we'll see.
Yes,
You said you had clearance over, is that something the FAA granted? Is that something you have to renew every year, or how did that come about?
over our private field.
Yes.
Okay, so what I do is I file a NOTAM every day that we're jumping with the FAA that gives the notice to airmen that we are actively parachuting. And we work very closely with Columbus, with the tower, and they're very good at keeping the air traffic away from us while we're dropping.
What altitudes do you typically jump from, and I guess the next question will be why and why not higher?
We go between 10,000 and 13,000 feet. So we kind of feel like that's high enough.
Well, that's probably close to the airplane's capability, isn't it?
It is. It is, yeah, the Cessna's one of quick climate, about that altitude.
Wow.
Yes.
So in terms of, do you have like a lot of people who have some kind of membership out there, and then as opposed to one-off coming out to a single event?
What we have found is that tandem skydiving makes skydiving so accessible. And I don't mean this as an insult if there's anybody younger in here, but most people want the shot for their social media. And then they're one and done. They want to post it up on whatever people use, Insta or Snapchat, and go on to the next thing. On occasion, we have people that want to actually get licensed and continue on with the sport, but for the majority of the country, we're finding that the tandem skydiving gives them the chance to experience the thrill and the exhilaration of free fall without the commitment.
What's like the average cost or expense of the training and?
A tandem skydive for your first step is $269. We do offer military discounts, group discounts. And after that, if you decide you want to get licensed, we have accelerated free fall, which runs about $319. Or we have the static line teaching progression, which tends to be more popular around here. I think maybe because we get a lot of military people, and that's $229 for the ground school and the first jump. And then there are 13 jumps in that static line program. So ballpark, it's about $2,500 to get fully licensed. Are you interested?
I'm more curious than anything.
Okay.
You mentioned right there in the static line program, and you mentioned earlier in the 3 million jumps, only 10 fatalities. I'm assuming all 10 are free fall solos and not static line. I'm assuming static line fatalities are very rare.
Absolutely. And not only that, they were experienced skydivers who didn't have equipment malfunctions. It was their own poor judgment that ended up killing them. And it's always human error.
Interesting.
All right, thank you. Right, thank you very much. As it become our tradition, we will donate a book on your behalf to the Greene County Community Library. This is a Wright Brothers book, so they did not jump out of those planes as far as I know. On at least not on purpose. All right. Our next meeting is next Friday. We have Nancy Schreiner of the Gehring Center for Family and Private Business at UC will be our speaker. So consider bringing a guest or prospective member. David and Amanda Hayes will be our greeters. Please keep an eye on our upcoming programs. We're really filled up for quite a bit. I think we have maybe one more free spot before the end of the year, but as always, great programs. Anything else for the good of the club? Okay, so if everybody would rise for the pledge. If you would mind leading us. Pledge allegiance to the of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Outside of our first area, I'm right also much. Signs right out there. Yeah.